It's time for the one and only, the premier, the only official podcast of ProRodeo. Your Chute Bosses are ready, so let's give it a go and talk some rodeo.
Welcome back into another exciting episode of the Chute Bosses. We mentioned that we are now in Season 2, Episode 2, and what a show we have coming your way. We'll sit down and talk with 8-time PRCA World Champion, probably the best bull rider of all time in the PRCA, Don Gay. Can't wait for that, Tracy, because he's a man of knowledge. You know, he broadcasts nowadays, but also just one of the best we've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that anybody will break his record. Sage Kimsey's got 7. I don't know if Sage, he's going to a different association. I don't know if he comes back and he can get the 8th to tie him. I don't think anybody's going to get 9. I mean, unless Stetson stays healthy long enough, possible. But that's so many bull riding titles, and he was so great at what he did in his legendary rides and on legendary bulls and winning averages and his commentary. I mean, there's no one better than his commentary. It's kind of like Don Meredith, and he's got his own unique style, but he's a great legend of the sport.
Yeah, he's always right there on the back of the buck and shoots. He's got the energy, he's not afraid to go out there and show his personality a little bit. So we'll enjoy sitting down with Don later on here in the Chute Bosses podcast. But as we always do, Tracy, let's start things off with our ProRodeo props. And this is one that, a story that you kind of unearthed a little bit and had the chance to learn a little bit more about. But steer wrestler Kyle Calloway overcame brain cancer to get back on the rodeo trail. He competed at the Montana
circuit finals rodeo.
Yeah, exactly.
And he didn't play. I believe he won some money there, and then he won some money at Buckeye as well in Arizona. He lives in Arizona now, but yeah, he went home one day. He felt kind of sick, and they thought he fainted. He thought he had a seizure, and next thing you know, and his wife's a nurse, and ended up having brain cancer, and they ended up having surgery, and they told him he'd never ride a horse again. They go down all these obstacles, and not only is he riding again, he's competing. It's a heartwarming story, to say the least.
Yeah, and if you want to have a chance to read it, you can go on to the ProRodeo Sports News digital magazine that's on ProRodeo.com, or you can also just visit our website. We threw the story up there as well. But, it just shows the resilience there and that kind of cowboy tough. When they told him he couldn't ride a horse again, he's like, well, that's not going to happen.
Right.
He wanted to prove the doctors wrong, and he's done it. And hopefully he can continue to go out there. And I think his wife either barrel races or
breakaway roper.
Breakaways
So they have a reason to go to rodeos. And the crazy thing is, steer wrestling's not easy.
No.
Of the sports out there, rough stock's not easy. I'm not saying that, but that's a hard sport to do, to come back into, and kudos to him. Anybody that can overcome something like that and the trials and tribulations of having to go through that. Hopefully he lives a long, healthy life from now on, and whether he competes in rodeo or not.
Yeah, there's your ProRodeo props. Leads us into our short round, and we've talked about this, kind of at length now since we found it out. But on January 30th, Kai Hamilton tears his labrum in his shoulder. He's expected to finally have surgery this week. It was kind of one of those processes where maybe we thought it was going to be super quick, but they wanted to, build up the strength. They wanted to have the mobility there for when he did have surgery, that he was ready to go. So we're just about to begin that recovery process for Kai Hamilton. And, he kind of told us that 6 to 8 month range, but obviously I'm sure he's hoping to be back, towards the back end of the summer, maybe early fall, and give himself a shot at Las Vegas. He thinks he can do it.
Yeah, you get on a heater like Stetson did, winning over $100,000 in September. Ideally you probably have to win $110,000, right around that area, to qualify for the NFR and bull riding in the top 15, maybe 120 at the highest side probably. To do that, with ground money, he's not out of it. You could go to a small event and win $10,000 if you're the only guy to ride, and you get into a bigger event late in the season. Who knows? I would never doubt those guys, because we watched Kai Hamilton do something at the NFR that no one could ever imagine. So I'm not going to be the guy to doubt him. It'll take some things to fall into place for him, but hopefully he can come back. And as you mentioned, Stetson. If Stetson's there pushing him, who knows? They're just going to have to make up a lot of ground in a short period of time, both of them.
Yeah, and if they come back, around the similar time, you mentioned Stetson was maybe shooting for that Reno, maybe Kai in August or, late August, early September. They could hit 60 rodeos between the two of them, and, and if they're going to some of those smaller rodeos where you got $20,000, $10,000 added, they could be the only two to win, Tracy, and end up, as you said, taking a bunch of ground money home. So that's going to be something we continue to watch here, is how Kai recovers. He originally told us that February 21st was going to be his surgery date, so we'll wait and see how that shakes out. Also in our short round, Tracy, just kind of an overbearing, not really news thing, but I just wanted to talk about the importance of the winter run in pro rodeo, because, this is obviously a stretch of rodeo that a lot of guys make the NFR coming through this stretch of rodeo. These 3 or 4 rodeos, whether you go Fort Worth, San Antonio, Houston, Austin, that bundle of rodeos is, ever important if you want to make the NFR.
Well, yeah, I mean, every guy that won Houston last year made the NFR, so that says it right there. It's $50,000 to win, and I mean, it all counts. So if you win Houston, your chances of getting the NFR are probably about 95%, barring injury. San Antonio's a rodeo you can win $20,000 at, easy. I mean, you win the finals and you do well in the rounds. And San Angelo at the back end, Austin pays well, 10, 20,000. San Angelo's got that shootout in April.
Shootout and the regular rodeo.
And the regular rodeo.
And X-Bowls this year.
And X-Bowls. So, I mean, right there in that little stretch, you could probably win it. If everything goes right, you could win $75,000, $80,000. And then you would go to the NFR, assuming you're healthy. And so it's a huge stretch. I mean, we always knew that these rodeos would pay well, and San Antonio was always the big one. Houston came back on board. Houston being there is huge. It's like having
$50,000.
Well, it's having Calgary in the middle of your winter run.
Yeah.
Because Calgary is the big one towards the summer. It counts, almost the full amount. It's a little different, but those are 2 huge rodeos. And Houston, obviously, if you can win that, I mean, Riley Webb set the season's record. He won Houston last year. Everybody that won Houston goes in, and we're excited. I mean, I'm excited because when you see that happen, you ultimately know that these guys stay healthy, they're going to get into the NFR. So you're essentially watching like a little mini NFR with those guys that win those rodeos.
Well, and some of these rodeos are, invite only, or you have to be top 30 in the world standings. And so it does provide a bit of an NFR preview for some of these guys. We mentioned the Cinch playoffs at Sioux Falls at the end of last season. These rodeos are very similar. You're getting the top 20, top 30 guys in the world going head to head, and it does create the difference of who might end up winning a world title as well. You mentioned Riley Webb, guys like Kai Hamilton a year ago. It can make the difference, make or break something. And I think these guys understand how important the winter run is in those big winter building rodeos.
Well, even a guy like Shad Mayfield's won like $70,000.
Yeah.
Imagine if he wins San Antonio or Houston.
He's got a $45,000 lead right now.
And then at that point, you give yourself some room to wiggle too, because then you don't have to. You're not beating down the path to go to every single rodeo.
We know he's dealing with some hip issues.
Yeah, and he's dealing with some stuff. And even if you're a guy like Tuff Cooper, if he won San Antonio a few years back, or if you can win Houston, you're not chasing your tail going to 30 rodeos and 8 days to try to make the NFR. I mean, that's why this run is so important, because it sets you up. It sets your summer schedule up entirely. Just not only just how busy do you have to be in it. If you win a rodeo like Houston, your rodeo count doesn't become a factor anymore, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you.
If you don't win Houston, then you're trying to see where's the best place for me to go to win money.
Yeah.
So that's why there's so many layers here.
Yeah, and if you have a dry winter, then you got to chase on the back end and just trying to get back to Las Vegas. That's everyone's ultimate goal, as we talked about. So it'll be interesting to watch. We'll have all of the coverage for you on ProRodeo.com and the ProRodeo Sports News app. And then, Tracy, as we continue to move on with the show here, we're going to go to our 8-question segment. And this one's a good one. You're one of your favorite events in rodeo. We're going to sit down with the 2021-23 two-time world champion steer roper Cole Patterson.
Yeah, he's got a sense of humor. He's kind of a wry sense of humor. He's funny, and he's a great roper. He's obviously, his dad's a legend, 4-time world champion Rocky Patterson. Rocky's a little gruff. He kind of reminds me of Earl Bruce, kind of a college coach, because just Woody Hayes type guy. And Cole's a little different, but man, Cole's got great horses thanks to his dad and thanks to himself, and he's roped great. And it's good that you have young blood in steer roping. I mean, usually the steer ropers are a little older for the most part, but now that young blood's got in, and there's guys like Cole Patterson and Slade Wood, and I'm going to enjoy talking to, even if it's a quick hitter with Cole Patterson, it'd be fun.
No doubt about it. Here's your 8-question segment with the 2023 world champion.
Favorite movie?
Tombstone.
Favorite restaurant?
Ooh. We'll go with Texas Roadhouse.
Favorite show you watch with your son Pruitt?
He's into the Paw Patrol, so I don't really watch it, but it's on in the background while he watches it.
Nice. What was Western Oklahoma State's mascot?
Pioneer.
K-State or KU?
KU.
Describe steer roping in one word.
Ooh, timing.
Favorite horse?
Have to go with Tigger, my sorrel horse.
If not steer roping, what event?
Ooh. Probably heading.
Tracy, just great catching up with Cole. You had a chance to sit down with him, and you mentioned good personality, and he's hungry for another world title, you can tell.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, he had a chance in 22. He just had a bad steer in round 10. I mean, and give J. Tom Fisher all the credit in the world. If anybody deserved to win a world title, it was him. But he had a bad steer in round 10. He did what he could with it, and he came up short in 2022. He's right there in the mix again. He's leading the world standings. And the thing about Cole Patterson is he always has the horsepower. He's had Tigger, he's had other horses, and if you have the horsepower and you're athletic and you're young, you've got a chance. And that's why every time he goes to Mulvane, and like I said, we always say, assuming there's no injuries with horses or himself, he's got a shot. And it's just good for steer roping to have a guy like that that's young, and guys like Slade Wood, because it shows where the future's headed.
Yeah, and he's already leading the world standings here in 2024, so definitely on the hunt for another world championship this season. We're going to take a quick break here on the Chute Bosses. We mentioned at the back end of the show. Stick with us because we're going to sit down with the 8-time world champ, the personality man himself, Don Gay. We'll have much more coming your way on the Chute Bosses right after this.
Farm life means always hoping for the best, but planning for uncertainty. You have to be ready for the next everything. The next dawn, the next season, the next harvest, the next technology, the next challenge, and the next generation. No matter what comes your way, we can help keep you ready for the next.
Welcome back into the Chute Bosses podcast. One more segment to go before we sit down with 8-time world champ and now Cowboy Channel broadcaster Don Gay. I'm really looking forward to that. But before we get there, Tracy, let's go back to our Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame spotlight as we always do. And this one's going to be, a lady that has done a lot for the sport of rodeo on the women's side of things and also professional rodeo. 2019 Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame inductee Jimmie Munroe. She has really, advanced the sport and the women, especially breakaway. Add that and seeing it being added to so many PRCA rodeos.
Yeah, Jimmie's fantastic to deal with. I've dealt with her a lot with the breakaway roping. Her husband's a Hall of Famer, passed away fairly recently, Bud Monroe, and she's been in the sport forever. She knows the sport inside and out, and a great representative for the WPRA to have a coalition with us to make things work with breakaway roping. She's always been a joy to work with, and she means so much to the sport, A, and B, you can just feel the respect that people have for her
100%,
in the rodeo industry. And that's a big thing to me as being part of this for over a decade is when people have your respect, it's a lot easier to get things done, and she's able to do that.
Yeah, she originally got her career started, or initially, I guess I should say, in 1975, won the WPRA World Championship, and then now she served 3 terms as the WPRA president. First one, 78 to 93, 11 to 12, and then in 2021, she comes back again and, continues to serve. So she's put in a lot of time, trying to get the WPRA up to this point, and definitely deserving of our Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame spotlight.
Right, no doubt. And like I said, it's just the respect issue people have with her, because when she walks in the door or makes phone calls, people listen, people try to understand what she's doing, and she tries to move the WPRA forward with our help, with the relationship he has with the PRCA.
Yeah, absolutely. So we thank Jimmie Munroe for all she continues to do and has done for the sport of rodeo. Let's go right into our Did You Know segment. And if you don't know, here us on the Chute Bosses, that is, we like to interact with our fans. So if you send us something in, if rodeo committees send us something in, we'll give you a shout out. We'll let you know. So this was a good one we got just earlier this week, Tracy. Our Did You Know segment was going to be, did you know the Fort Bend County Fair Association, the host of the Rosenberg, Texas Rodeo, made history areas. They named Alicia Cassius as the 2024 president. She becomes the first Hispanic female to ever lead the rodeo, and that's awesome to see. Rodeo continue to break some of those barriers.
Yeah, I mean, that's what rodeo does. I mean, a lot of people think that, I don't want to go into this diatribe about it, but there's a lot of African American world champions. We have women and Indian, people of Native American descent. I mean, it's a melting pot here at the rodeo, in the rodeo world, and a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand rodeo. And for her to be getting a position of president at a Rosenberg rodeo, it means a lot. I mean, obviously to her and her family, but just tells you what you can do in the world of rodeo as a woman to be a president of a rodeo committee, and it's a PRCA sanctioned rodeo, and then you get the respect of other people, and then you break down barriers.
Yeah, so we can't thank them enough for sending us that information, and congrats there to Alicia. She has done great work, obviously, and that's a good rodeo down there in Rosenberg, so we look forward to seeing what they do here in 2024. And our viewer question, Tracy, is going to be, let's see, this one's coming from Jared on Instagram. How are rough stock rides scored? A lot of people just assume, it's one judge throwing out, okay, where you 50, 60, all the way up to 100, but it's actually much more complex than that. During the regular season, we get 2 judges that each score a cowboy's ride 0 to 25. They combine those scores as well with the animal scores to get up to 100. It's kind of an intricate process when you think about it.
Yeah, and that's why when you say a cowboy has like an 86-point ride, because it's a ride together with the rough stock. Mm-hmm. It's not a score necessarily. It's not his score. Yeah. It's the combined score of the ride. And I mean, obviously, if you're getting 50, a lot of rough stock animals, especially NFR, like the Bodacious of the world, and
they can score 42 points by themselves.
Right,
yeah.
And then so if you and that's why when these guys look at their draw, they know if they get a great horse or a great bull and they do well, they're going to get checks, and that's why they're so concerned about the draw. If you draw a great animal, you don't want to pass that up, because it's an opportunity for you to win money, and based on the scoring, because if that animal has a good day, which usually the great ones do, you're going to win money. That's why they understand the scoring system. Cowboys understand it. Judges obviously do. So it's a little more complicated than, hey, he got a 75.
And then they got to put it in to try and get it up to the announcers and the television and.
Yeah, it's far more complex than people realize, and that's what's amazing at the NFR when we do the 10 rounds. How fast things happen. I mean, that rodeo at the NFR, it's essentially a 2-hour rodeo with everything going on and all the scores and the great rough stock. So it's a good question, because a lot of people don't understand that, especially outside of rodeo. You just think, oh, that must have just looked like an 80-point ride, and there's a lot more involved with it.
Yeah, it's not just like swimming where they're holding up, 10s or in the slam dunk.
Gymnastics or slam dunk contest, correct?
Yeah, so just to give you an example, one judge can score, so the 2 judges, and say they both give the stock 23. So the stock gets a 46-point score, and then on the other side they score the cowboy 44, 2 22s. Right. You combine that for a 90-point score, and then that's where you look at, how it kind of shakes out. Like you've always told me, it's not necessarily a cowboy had this score. It was, this ride was a, so that's a good question. We appreciate Jared sending it in to us, and if you want to read more on that, we have a Pro Rodeo 101 tab on our website, which kind of explains that, and it explains a lot of the other, I guess, simple details that maybe get overlooked in the sport of rodeo, so you can check that out for sure. Well, Tracy, it's time for one of our favorite segments here on the Chute Bosses podcast. It's Buck's return. He's locked and loaded, and the man had a good word for last episode. I'm curious what he's going to cook up this time.
Yeah, Buck's going to shake things up, and I think he's wearing a different shirt. That shirt he was wearing, I like the shirt, but this shirt was getting a little rank. I think he lost that shirt.
Rank? Is that what you're Tracy rank?
Yeah, well, if I say that, it's more
a good
like
play
rank,
on words.
More like rank, but it's rank. It looks like he dropped that shirt in the porta potty, and then he had to pick it back up, and he had to switch. He's going to switch some gear, maybe have a little more style. He's got some surprises up his sleeve today, is what he's told me.
Yeah, so we're going to get ready to send it down to Buck. Tracy's going to have to jump out, so I'll be sitting down talking with Donnie Gay, but we're going to send it down to Buck. He's got your Pro Rodeo word of the day.
I'm Buck, official correspondent for the Chute Bosses podcast. My word of the day is Wrangler, as in the Wrangler NFR. When it comes to Buck, I'm trying to wrangle up a good time. 8 seconds at a time. Woo! Woo!
Woo! Woo!
They say time waits for no one.
And yet, I refuse to be held hostage by its ticking clock.
Is this land worth knowing?
You tell me.
The all-new Ranger XD 1500, time doesn't have to wait, because you've got it standing still.
Tracy had to step out here on the Chute Bosses podcast, but we are back, and we talked about it at the top of the show. We have an exciting guest coming your way here on today's episode. We're sitting down with 8-time PRCA bull riding world champion Donnie Gay. Don's joining us now here on the podcast. And Don, first of all, we just appreciate you jumping on here. We know you're busy. You got a lot of things going on this time of year.
Well, it has been a little bit busy, especially this week, but that's a good thing. I'm still trucking.
Well, yeah, we really appreciate your time, no doubt about it. And, first thing we want to start off is just talking a little bit about your historic career, because it has been that, the greatest bull rider that we've ever seen. Take me through, Donnie, what allowed you to have the success that you had throughout your career to ultimately reach that goal and become a ProRodeo Hall of Famer?
Well, I think I had a distinct advantage as I look back and I see young guys, starting the trek of learning how to ride bulls and that sort of thing. And then once you learn how to ride, learn how to win, how to be able to travel, and all of the things that go with it. My dad and Jim Shoulders started the Mesquite Championship Rodeo in 1958, and I was 5 years old. So I grew up in the world's largest dirt playground, and it was a good thing that I wanted to be a cowboy, specifically a bull rider. Jim Shoulders, 16-time world champion, 7 of those world titles were in the bull riding. And that's kind of where I set my sights as a youngster at 5 years old.
For Donnie, for you, you mentioned that just a little bit. When you started out your career, did you ever think it would go the way that it did go? Imagining that you would have this type of career?
No, and other than, I didn't really want to be the 8-time world champion bull rider. I wanted to be the world champion bull rider. At 5 years old, 6, 10, 12, you don't think of actually having to ever stop in your dream. You usually wake up before that, but I never really wavered. I remember being really, really scared of not being able to make it. I spent the young part of my childhood trying to be as good as my older brother Pete. He was a very gifted athlete, and everything he did well, but he did it easily. And I'm pretty hard-headed, and so I just kept on plugging.
For you, you look back at everything that you've done in your career, Don, and then you look at the guys that are riding now, the Stetson Wrights, the Kai Hamiltons, the Sage Kimseys. What do you think about this generation of bull riders? You spent a lot of time watching them over the last couple of years.
Well, I think they're a couple of things, and most of it's mental, because one thing doesn't really change. You can put neon lights and country music stars, and you can get all of the what I call hoopla. You can put all that in, but bull riding doesn't ever change. You put one leg on each side, and you got to be there at 8 seconds. And how you do that, nobody cares as long as you do it. And the guys today are so much better educated. Now, I don't know how that translates into what a person's going to wind up winning, but it has to be a little bit of an advantage. It's kind of like navigational radios in airplanes. The analogy, I love two things: rodeoing and flying. Aviation has just always been a thrill. In the 70s, when I started learning how to fly, and using my airplane to get from rodeo to rodeo, flying in bad weather with the navigational equipment that we had. It's just a wonder we lived over it. Because you never really knew exactly where you were in space. You had an idea, and you were using a stopwatch, on my little Timex that I wore, timing approaches, and now the moving maps and GPS flying is so much safer, and it's a lot like bull riding. There's a lot of those unknown things that now everyone is aware of. It just costs a lot. You have to sacrifice your body to achieve goals in bull riding, because it's not if you get hurt. The three questions are when, how bad, and when can I start back, Doc?
And speaking of that, you had one of the most legendary calls, at this past year's Wrangler National Finals Rodeo. Kai Hamilton unfortunately gets knocked out there, and it was a scary situation. I'm not going to repeat it, but you said, he knocked that out of him. Take me through what that moment was like for you to experience it, because you've seen a lot of knockouts in the sport of rodeo.
Well, I have, but, what happens to me personally when I'm standing on the back of the bucking chutes and I am right there in the arena, and it's all real time, I'm reacting with my mouth like I used to do my rear end. I'm riding the bull, and that was just a smack, dang, bang, and it just came out, but the reason that, I was going to say knock the dog out of him, and that would have been it, or knock the wax out of his ears. That would have been it, with the exception the catch pen gate was closed, because as it happened, everybody's, you have that oblique moment and everybody freezes. The catch pen gate was shut, and that's what caused the expletive to come out at the time. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. But I still was ashamed of myself because I'm a better broadcaster than that.
I think you did all right. It led for a great moment. And then, that kind of takes me back to talking about that broadcasting career. Was that something you ever envisioned yourself doing? And, why did you go ahead and take that leap, going from riding bulls to going in the broadcast booth and talking about it?
Well, one of the things that I dislike about the rodeo genre as it is today is the team aspects. You're not a team when you're riding a bull. You're the individual. So I've never called it bull riding a sport. I call it a lifestyle, because as you see, I never take my uniform off. And that's just me personally. The broadcasting thing is just an extension of my life in rodeo, because that is all that I've ever had in my life, particularly is airplanes and rodeo, and the people that are in it, the Jim Shoulders, the Harry Tompkins, Sage Kimsey, the list is long and broad. So I just, in 1970, I believe it was 1976, CBS was doing a network broadcast, and they were televising, of all places, the PRCA rodeo in Chandler, Arizona. And it was sponsored and paid for by Wrigley's Big Red Gum. That's how long ago that was. And Pam Minnick and I and Jim Shoulders did the commentary for that rodeo, and that was my first actual sit down with a microphone and calling a rodeo. And it was just fun, and I was good at it timing wise, just because I have competed and won in every event in rodeo. including the barrel race. So it was just a natural. It was more like my uniform. It was just me. And my dad started the telecast on TNN, the Nashville Network, after a couple of starts with ESPN and that sort of thing. And we had a 14-year run, being one of the top 2 shows on the Cable Ace Awards years ago. And my dad's always said, if you can put rodeo on national television on a regular schedule, same time, same station, where you don't have to search for it, and especially in today's climate, you put rodeo on TV every night where you click on the Cowboy Channel and watch a rodeo. Rodeo is going to start growing. We're going to start challenging, the Major League Baseball and the PGA golf and NASCAR for shares of viewership, because it's not anything any more exciting than watching a rodeo, especially the bull riding.
You know about that, Donnie. And, as we continue to look back at where the sport of rodeo was and where it's heading, where do you see rodeo heading? Where do you see bull riding heading here in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, like I said earlier, the one thing that doesn't change is one leg on each side and making an ugly face for 8 seconds and getting that done over and over again. But of all of the television commercials that you've ever seen, and as you walk across your living room with the TV on, I guarantee you've never walked on by when the gates open and those bells start clanging and the bulls are snorting and jumping and kicking. That stops traffic. That's what rodeo does. It stops traffic. Once you sit down, you can find something in the broadcast that'll entertain you as well as anything on television.
What are you hoping to see here, in 2024, Don? Stetson Wright out, Kai Hamilton out for an extended period of time. What's your outlook, and what are you hoping to see in the bull riding here this season?
Well, I know we're going to see, top flight rodeo. It doesn't matter how good you are. If you're not entered and at the rodeo, somebody's going to replace you in at least that night's broadcast. I expect Stetson Wright and Kai Hamilton to come back better than ever. They're young and they're going to rehabilitate. Your body will heal itself if you give it enough time. I'm a perfect example of that. So these guys have the drive. They have the want to. They don't want to get a real job. They're not ready to go into broadcasting because they still have titles to win. And I expect to see them back in the winner's circle just as soon as they start back. But up until then, guys like Creek Young and Tristan Hutchins, all these guys, they all have an opportunity. Josh Frost, when's he going to win his world title? It's coming. Just have to give it enough time.
I can't wait to see how it shakes out, and we look forward to hearing you back on the broadcast. We know we got a lot of great pro rodeo memories. So, Don, we just really appreciate in your busy time of the year you sitting down to chat with us, talk about rodeo a little bit.
Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed the conversation, and tip of the American hat. That's one you ought to have.
Thanks, Don. Well, we appreciate it. He joins us here on the Chute Bosses podcast, and another great episode is in the books, and we'll have much more coming your way as we wrap up San Antonio. We'll also talk a little bit about Houston in our next episode. All of that will be coming your way on the Chute Bosses, but until we get there, keep on rodeoing.